Now let's move into some mayfly patterns. Obviously, this time of year, it's very exciting for us as tailwater enthusiasts because we're starting to see the first mayflies of the year hatching, the Baetis mayflies, the blue-wing olives. And so typically like mid to late March, the trout that have been overwintering in the slow, deep pools, the ones that have been feeding almost exclusively on midges, now are starting to wake up a little bit. Generally the first week of April, spring has sprung and we're starting to see consistent blue-wing olive hatches every afternoon between 1 and 3 o'clock. One thing that's important to understand is that riffle fish are feeding fish. So now fish that are starting to move into the transitional zones and back into the riffles are going to be those fish that are actively feeding. So I'm going to tie a couple patterns that I think are must-haves on any western tailwater. One of those is a RS2 and one of those is a pheasant tail. Now I got to find where I just put my size 18 Timco hook. So one of the beautiful things about this pattern, this is a Mercury pheasant tail, so it's a variation of Frank Sawyer's original pattern, which dates back to 1929. It's an oldie but a goodie, and in so many different variations. You can tie it just a standard pheasant tail. You can tie it with a gold bead. If you want to increase your sink rate, you use a tungsten bead. If you want to keep it a little bit slimmer in profile with just a dash of flash, then you can use this little Mercury variation as well. So the pheasant tail is going to imitate a wide range of mayflies, even possibly some stoneflies in larger sizes. Like if you tie a size 18 black pheasant tail, it's the perfect winter stonefly nymph, okay? And if you tie it in a 16, it's a nice little yellow Sally. So keep in mind that if you go by upsizing it, you can have some stonefly variations as well. But typically for your mayflies, size 16 down to about a 24. You can vary the coloration of it from a ginger, which would be a nice pale morning dun nymph, right down into olive for Baetis, red quills, so on and so forth, trico nymphs. I mean, really, again, your imagination and is going to make this an unlimited possibility with regard to mayfly nymph. So this is a Timco 101, size 18, and I've got an extra small glass bead on there, the Mercury bead. And we're going to begin with a jam knot back about hook point there. And we're going to take a few strands of pheasant tail fibers here. I try to keep this pattern as thin and as sparse as possible. And so I'm going to use 4 fibers off of this tail to tie the entire fly with. So what I'll do here is I'll take 4 of these pheasant tail fibers. I'm going to make sure that and I'm going to pull them off at a 90-degree angle, transfer the material in my fingers, and I'm going to tie in my tail. I'm going to adjust the tail here. Typically on my nymphs, my tails, I like them to be about 2/3 of a shank length long. That's the equation that you want to use for that. I'm going to use a little bit of gold wire for the ribbing on this. And I like the extra fine Lagarton wire on this, which is a fine wire with a varnished coating over it. And what we're trying to accomplish here with this ribbing is a little bit of added durability. I'm going to take 2 turns here, 2 turns here to catch that other piece of wire, and then I'm going to advance this thread forward. I'm going to take those original grouping of pheasant tail fibers and then just start advancing those forward. Again, with the goal being to keep that body as thin and sparse as possible. We're going to counter rib the gold wire to create a little bit of segmentation, as well as the durability that we mentioned a moment ago. Probably one of the biggest things to a pheasant tail is the lack of durability. If a brown trout tooth drags across the abdomen, it's going to break. But this is going to really help that out a lot. It's an easy fly to tie, so if it falls apart, it's not that big of a deal. So we got these 4 original fibers. I'm going to put 2 on the front side and 2 on the rearward side of this hook. And then I'm going to put in a piece of mylar tinsel for the wing case. Again, the option would be to tie a standard variation of this, or you can tie a flashback variation of this. So I'm going to tie this mylar tinsel in. You can use UTC, or you can use Danville. This happens to be Danville here. And I'm going to tie that in so that it's about halfway on the hook shank there. What you'll find in a lot of cases when you're doing wing cases is that the wing pad, when you pull it forward, is going to creep just a little bit. So make sure that your proportions are right halfway in the middle there. Then we're going to take, again, a little bit of peacock curl. And this is where you can use your discretion on this. Think about beta nymphs. I mean, beta nymphs should be very thin and very sparse. They're very streamlined. They're swimmers. Okay, so their variation should be tied appropriately. Now, moving into some of your other mayflies like pale morning duns and tricos, they have much more of a chunky appearance. Okay, so you can really do whatever you want with regard to the thorax on this particular pattern. I generally tie it just a little bit thicker than most because, again, I'm kind of relying on this peacock. I'm going to tie that in tip first like we've discussed here a moment ago. And then I'm going to take a few turns here, usually about 7 turns forward up towards the eye there. I'm going to take 2 material locking wraps there. Pull my wing pad right over the top here. I've got those kind of separated there. Take a couple material locking wraps there. Trim off the excess material and then do a whip finish. So great little mayfly pattern. You can dredge this down near the substrate, or you can fish it mid-column. Both are acceptable. Typically, okay, we're going to trim the legs off here. Typically, when I start to see some mayflies emerging, then I'm going to start to begin to adjust where I'm fishing this particular pattern in the water column. So very simple pattern, Mercury pheasant tail again, and a wide range of sizes to imitate both some stoneflies and mayflies.